A wall at Alcatraz today. 29.7 kilometers of racing, so it's short. 324 meters of climbing overall. The lap is 9.9 kilometers. 3 laps today of the course that's in front of you. If you take a look at that reg segment, it is stepped. First one, the steepest, hits over 11%. The second one, around 8%. The top one does go over 10 in the kick to the top.
A short climb, but it is punchy enough to get some separation, and that's why these guys are going so hard. All you need to do in lap 1 is survive in the front group. You just got to make that selection.
Take a look at that. Hayden Pucker is in with the rest of that group as well. What a phenomenal experience to be in that room racing.
Well, Hayden Pucker really has not changed his strategy from week 1. He is staying aggressive. He's staying on the front. He continues to take the battle to this group. This is the move that he's been saving up for. When he goes big. And I think Hayden Pucker is going to try and roll this one all the way to the line.
Pucker's gone at 12 watts per kilo. 14 watts per kilo nearly from Hayden Pucker as he comes around the corner. Thomas Thrall kicks nearly 16 watts per kilo from Thomas Thrall. Can he do enough? Can he run onto the back of Pucker? Can Pucker hold this pace around the corner? Thrall is coming. Thrall goes over the top of Pucker. Thomas Thrall beats Hayden Pucker by 0.8 of a second. Just got the timing and the kick to perfection.
Our elite women's race, full on power. Trying to cover these moves by Van Houweling and Kolchinski up at the front. Hermansen might be on the back foot a little bit. She's got to respond to this one in laser focus for Van Houweling, holding on to Kolchinski here.
Gallegos, look at this effort on the bridge.
Oh, she had her Takis today, facing the intensity in this group as she goes away, leaving Kolchinski 7 seconds behind now.
Goes under the line. Elise Gallegos takes the cheer in the training room and takes the line of Kristen Kolchinski. She couldn't close the gap to Elise Gallegos. She can see the banner. She's going to come through for second place today.
Exceptional racing in week 2, expected to continue here in week 3 of the Echelon Racing League as we get ready for the next stop here in Alula. Hello, everybody. Brad Soner here, as always, with Emma Martin as we get ready for another exciting week of racing. If this one is anything like what we saw in week number 2, it's going to be a great couple hours of virtual racing here. We're going to start with our pro men and move to the pro women after that as we race on the Alula course out there today. But I think we got to start with our pro men's race. A tight battle at the top of this one with week 2's finishers, Hayden Pucker and Tom Thrall. Emma, I am so excited to see this rematch.
Yeah, it's getting closer at the top, isn't it? And I think the series now, you can see there on the screen in front of you, the top 10, and you can see the arrows showing the changes in places that second round did to the first round finish places. But Pucker at the top, he's had a first and a second. Thrall, that's a third and a first, moving him up into second place. Bjorn Andreasen, he took second place in round 1, 7th in round 2, drops him into third. Jerd Hurd had a great second round, moving him up to 4th overall. And Zach Nair, for me, has been Mr. Consistent, a 6th and a 4th, putting him in that 5th place overall. It is going to be all to race for today because the series really is hotting up, Brad.
And most of those riders returning this week, so this will be a perfect rematch of week number 2. The difference this week in week 3, Emma, will be the course, because not a ton of climbing here in Alula.
No, not at all. 294 meters only of climbing over the 34.6 kilometer course today in Alula. 2 laps of the course that you can see in front of you, 17.3 kilometers in length, and no main climb. Instead, we have 7 rollers. Yep, 7 of them. I've counted every single one of them. And the first one being the longest and the steepest at 400 meters. It tops 10% of the top of that first roller. But the rest of them are between 200 and 300 meters, averaging around 6 to 6.5%. It's going to be about skill, timing, and technique to see if this group can stay together or whether anybody goes away.
Elite Men underway here on Alula as our group takes off from the line here. Now, Hayden Pucker is going to be the big question in this group. It's not a question of if, but when Hayden Pucker goes. That has been his MO week after week after week. He is really the aggressor in this group, and everyone else kind of sits back and watches Pucker. Here we go. It's happening again. Hayden Pucker back to the front once again, 7 watts per kilo right off the line.
Well, I just think he's absolutely put his mark down on this Echelon Racing series and said, this is the one I want now. I'm coming out every single time and I'm giving it my all. And he's doing exactly the same again today, Brad, as you're right. He's straight off the front. 7 watts per kilo he came out of that start pen. He's still at 6.5.
It's so easy in this virtual racing to sit back and let someone else take the lead, kind of watch how the race plays out. But Pucker has consistently showed that his racing style does not play that way. So now Andresen, Panizza, Ospina, Matias, these are all guys that have been trying to chase Hayden Pucker for the better part of 3 weeks now, but just have not been able to figure out that magic formula of keeping him within sight, keeping him in the group. That's all you got to do. It's so easy to say from this side of the microphone that you just have to follow Hayden Pucker, but it's one of the toughest things in sport.
I don't think I could follow Hayden Pucker for 200 metres on a bike out of a start pen, but Riccardo Panizza, who's on our screens at the moment, is doing a great job. He's closed down the gap. He's sat in third at the moment. The group coming tightly together. Hill, Brune, Matthias, Fryatt, Neil Fryatt back in the mix today. Great to see him. Bruce Bird, Thomas Thrall, Bjorn Andreasen always pays close attention to the front of the race. And for me, he really is the rider that marks Hayden Pucker.
Good to see Eric Hill hanging in there as well, founder of the Echelon Racing League and the Project Echelon Racing team. They had a great week last week. They were able to race in person, did sort of a team camp, got the guys all together. So it was really cool to see all those riders racing together, including Hayden Pucker in that group. So they're back home now, but we'll see if that changes the racing at all. There's a good look at Hayden right there. Got his Team USA shorts on and locked in. This guy doesn't miss.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting to see whether there was added motivation last week, Brad, being part and parcel of that squad. We did have a bird's eye view into that room last week with all of the Echelon riders, as well as Hayden, and Zach Nair was there as well. It was a really interesting picture into that team camp and the effort and the work that goes in right the way across, whether you're at the front of the race or in the middle main pack. The effort and the work that goes in from these riders, these athletes, absolutely phenomenal. And let's not forget these racers, world class. A number of the riders on your screen today, part and parcel of that World Championship final in October in Abu Dhabi. You are watching something special week after week with the Echelon Racing League.
Relative lull in the power right now. These guys hanging out right around 3.54 watts per kilo. You can see it's only zone 1 or 2 in the power scale in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. One of the very cool features of MyWhoosh gives you an idea of just how hard these guys work. And you can see Zach Nair straight chilling, using the time to grab some water and wait for Hayden Pucker to go again. I'm sure he knows it's coming. Zach Nair, an extremely strong rider, but also a very good tactician as well. Good to see you, Zach. Welcome back.
Yes, look at that. I can confirm that Brad is waving to you, waving back across the screen. It's one of those things that commentators do. We can see them, they can't see us, but we still wave. Well, Zach concentrating, look, we made him laugh now. Zach's concentrating on the screen as he should, because they're at 2.7 kilometers at the moment. And on the top right-hand corner of your screen, you can see those rollers coming. They started around the 3.2 kilometer marker. So these riders, they'll have recce'd the route, Brad. They will know what is coming and they will be getting themselves into the best position for what is about to be one of the key strategic parts of this course today.
You got to think that someone hits it on these rollers. That's really the only opportunity you're going to have in terms of course undulation to get a gap here. Otherwise, you're just going to have to do it with pure power on the flat. So if you want to use these rollers, you got to do it now, maybe the second lap, but we'll see who the first to hit out is. Eric Mitchell going to head to the front here, making sure he's ready to tackle these. As you can see, the road's starting to go uphill right now. Let's see who the first to jump is.
Well, Zach Nair is on the front of the pack. Eric Mitchell just moving up to close contention. In fact, Mitchell putting down the power strongly at the moment and heading towards the front with Andreasen. It's Bjorn Andreasen who comes through with the big punch first of all. Panizza now matching it. As we said, this is the longest of these rollers at 400 meters in length. These are really short, sharp attack points. It really pretty much is an under and over session for the next 7 rollers.
Look at this power on the right-hand side of your screen, all red all the way down as everybody goes into zone 6 on the way up and over. Bjorn Andreasen finds himself with a little gap over Ricardo Panizza, first time up and over. But remember, that's just the first roller. They got a few more coming.
They do indeed. And interesting to see Andreasen coming back off the power a little bit. In fact, I did wonder when I said that whether we would see an unders and overs session or whether we would just see a strong time trial push, utilising the downhill momentum as well. But Andreasen did indeed put the power down on the climb and come up off of it on the descent. He's back on the front again as they go here very quickly into the second of the rolls. You can see Brune on your screen at the moment, up and out of the saddle, tapping a strong rhythm with a strong cadence, currently sitting inside the top 10 at the moment, paying attention. But it's very much now you can see on the screen that 2 groups seem to be forming early on through this section.
This is really good riding by Brune right here. You could see how he finessed his way just to stay on the group. You don't want to go too hard that you're wasting energy, but he did a very good job of making sure that he was maintaining contact with that group without going too hard. Meanwhile, the Hayden Pucker dilemma is back on the front of this group at just under 7 watts per kilo. Now Pucker going to hit into the second roller of the day, and now Thrall, Andreasen, Nair, all the familiar characters that have been chasing Hayden Pucker for the better part of 3 weeks, back to it now as Pucker opens a gap.
Oh, Pucker pushing on at the front here. Andreasen adamant that wheel is not going away from him today. Zach Nair closing the gap down onto Andreasen, taking as much of a toe as he goes over the top onto that wheel. Panizza is there as well. In fact, take a look at that. There is Bjorn Andreasen on the screen. Zach Nair, Thomas Thrall, Ricardo Panizza, Neil Fryatt. Panizza and Fryatt just slightly getting gapped at the moment. It's going to need to be a bit of a push from those two to close that gap down, because you really do not want to let that gap go too far this early into the race.
They're all still in it. Winner last week in week number 2. Neil Fryatt just a little bit behind there. Ospina trying to get there. This is such a crucial time in the race right now because what we're seeing are the cracks in the foundation. But when you see these gaps, they only get bigger. Look at Tom Thrall doing everything he can to close this gap. He knows he's got to do it now. It's now or never to get with this Nair, Pucker, Andreasen group. So Tom Thrall is throwing every watt that he has at trying to close down this gap.
Yeah, and he's doing it right timing as well, because these last 4 rollers are the smallest of the rollers through this section, around 200 meters each. They're very, very punchy. And Thrall, knowing that he needs to close it down, it's looking like it's around a 4-second gap back to the chasing group. Fryatt on the right side of the group, if he can push, and he really is pushing. Take a look at the effort and the dig going in there at the moment from Neil Fryatt, wanting to get onto the right side of the break. Thrall is the rider behind him. Then it's a 5-second gap back to Marr and Bird. Now, the interesting thing is the length of the flat section between these rollers on lap 1 and lap 2, and whether we can see a group work together behind, Brad, to close down any gaps.
$1 million question this week was, when would the separation come? And it's roller number 3. We've already got our front group established here. I can only imagine what this is going to be like in the next few laps coming up here, as now Fryatt and Thrall trying to work together to bring this group back. But looks like 3 going to go clear on the front, about 6 seconds up the road for Nair, Pucker, and Andreasen.
Well, this for me is really about the technique of riding this section on the race and really getting it dialed. And Puckett, Nair and Andreasen, well, regularly we see them on the Sunday Race Club week after week after week, and they really understand how to race this platform and how to race this type of terrain. So Nair, Pucker and Andreasen, the 3 riders now looking like they're going clear, but it's a big group behind, Brad. And I think if they work together, what is at the moment around a 10-second gap may not be enough.
Yeah, the important thing here will be that this group stays as a group and uses that drafting in the game to make it more efficient to get up. One of the great things about racing here on MyWhoosh, you can obviously see the wattage that the lead group is doing. You can see the gap that you're trying to make up. It's pretty simple. All you got to do is put a bigger number up on the board than those front guys, and you should start to close down that gap. Now, I know that's easier said than done. It's a little tougher to match Hayden Pucker's 8, 10, 12 watts per kilo when he decides to put those out, but on this flat section, they should have time to kind of figure out that math equation and just put the right wattage in to try to bring these guys back. Now, Bruce Bird is taking the opposite approach. He's heading out on his own. He's going to try and solo bridge this gap across. Bird can absolutely do this as he goes up to 7 watts per kilo, going to put in a big effort, but now down to 9 seconds, almost 10 for Bruce Bird to make up. This is a big ask for a solo rider to go across a 10-second gap to Pucker, Andreessen, and Nair. It's really going to take those 3 guys at the front to kind of let off the gas a little bit. That'll be the only chance that Bruce Bird will have to get into this group because he's got 3 guys pushing each other all together in the front group, and Bird is all by himself in the gap.
It's interesting. The pace has come off the chase group behind, and Bird continuing to push at the moment, trying to hold a strong time trial pace, aiming and hoping that the front group takes some rest and recovery and knock the pace off slightly. You can see here, this is the chase group behind, and it's a big chase group. So we've got the 3 out front, we've got Bruce Bird in the middle, and then we have this large group, Thomas Thrall, the winner of round 2. Part and parcel of this, we might well see some action from him in terms of bringing that lead group back, but the lead group is in sight at least, giving that added motivation to chase.
All Thrall has to do is get there. I think we learned last week he has a really good sprint, a really good sort of short power effort. Hayden Pucker is more like a diesel engine. He's a Mack truck that can go for these long, sustained efforts. But if Thrall can get there, and if he's there, I think he's got a little advantage in the final kick here. So all Thrall needs to do is close down this gap. But again, he's got to work with these other guys. There's no chance of getting up there if you try and do this one on your own. Bruce Bird learning that lesson right now as he goes down to 14 seconds and looks like he's going to give up the ghost and go back into this group, try and work together to bring back the front 3.
Yeah, he is. The group swallowing up Bird and bringing him back in, and you can see him there on the screen. The Canadian flag on the wall beside him, but he's now back and into the pack with the chase group, and I'm just taking a look through the pace on the chase group. Panizza just picking it up slightly, may well be coming to the front and taking a turn, but the gap to the front group to me looks like it's going out at the moment. Yep, 17 seconds at the moment. So this group really need to get it dialed if they're going to do anything about the front 3 that are on the right hand side of your screen, because Pucker, Andreessen, and Nair at the moment are traveling faster.
Got to give some credit to Bruce Bird. I think he saw the writing on the wall in this group, realizing that that probably is the winning move rolling away up the road. And this group not going to be very helpful in bringing them back. And so got to give Bird some credit in his decision to at least try to go across the gap, because he knows if he just sits in this group, he was watching that time go up and up and up, now up to 17 seconds. If these guys aren't motivated, you've got to leave them behind. Bird gave it a go, but wasn't able to go across. So now they've got to overcome what is now a 20-second gap to the 3 leaders up the road, and they are continuing to hit it all red in 1, 2, and 3 as Andreessen, Pucker, and Nair hit another roller here and go into zone 5.
No, they do indeed. And it's interesting to see who's not picking up the pace in the chase group and coming to the front and sitting up, really allowing that gap to extend. But at the moment, Hayden Pucker, no sitting up for him because he's the rider pushing on at the front. Andreessen and Nair matching him as they go over the bump in the road at 10.1 kilometres. It is indeed a 17.3 kilometre lap, and it's pretty much a flat run-in from this point to the end of the lap, and then, well, the action starts all over again.
You also got to keep in mind in this group, Zach Nair, the coach of Hayden Pucker. So we'll see if the student becomes the master in this scenario with the coach in the breakaway here. An interesting scenario.
I might not like to be Bjorn Andreessen today away with those 2. That could be some dangerous territory for Andreessen, and it may well take some very smart thinking to outrace those 2 together.
A huge advantage having a couple guys that you know are going to be working together, at least trying to figure out how they can maximize the results here. So we'll see what Andreasen does. All he's really got to play defense today. This is not the time to get aggressive, not the time to go on the offensive. Just try and hold on to these two guys because you are looking at two of the best virtual racers in the world linked up together in a group of three with one odd man out.
Well, I'm starting to think, Brad, that this group have settled for racing for fourth and fifth today because they really are backing off the pace. Mar sitting at around 2 watts per kilo. Bird now there as well, and Panizza. They really look to have made the strategic decision that they are racing each other as a group rather than trying to chase down the top three.
Look how quickly this gap went out. A minute 18 back to this group from the front riders here.
Yeah.
You see group three with Andre Matias trying to go on his own. Eric Hill trying to hang in there at 13th right now. He's got Matias in his crosshairs just up the road. And then you see about a minute 20 up to that Bird, Friat, Panizza group. So these guys in really, really tough positions, stuck all by yourself out in the virtual Alula world, nowhere to draft. As we go back up to the front group, and I see Pucker and Nair, but I do not see a third in this front group.
Yeah, so Pucker and
And
Nair pushing on at the moment. The gap 27 seconds. Looking like Andreasen may well have had an issue.
well, that is part of virtual racing. Unfortunately, just like the in real life racing, you got to check all those little boxes. There's a lot of things that can go wrong in any bike race, and it's just a different type of mechanical, an e-mechanical, if you will, an unfortunate part of racing on the internet, I guess.
Well, someone told me, what was it? Someone said to me the other day, it's a bit like a virtual puncture. I quite like that phrase. But Pucker and Nair, now the two riders clear. Mar now starting to come to the front of the group with Bird Ospina in there as well. Thomas Thrall happy to sit in that bunch at the moment. That's an interesting move from Thrall after the win last time out. But looking at his pace at the moment, he's very comfortable to sit there.
This group is going to be a really great race to watch on the left-hand side of your screen. There are a lot of really evenly matched guys in this second group, so it'll be really exciting to watch this one play out for third. Just like we're watching first and second play out on the right-hand side of your screen is now Hayden Pucker and Zach Nair alone in the front group. And these guys are going to continue to push each other. This is a perfect matchup. Again, the coach and the student racing together on the front of the group in week three. The story doesn't get much better than this.
No, it doesn't indeed. And there's a different story every week at the moment on the Echelon Racing League. I did just notice, that Andre Matthias and Eric Hill have indeed come together as a group of two on the road a little bit further back. So no lonely riding anymore for those two because they have teamed up as a duo.
This one's starting to get spicy with a little uphill kick here as Mason Roca goes into zone 6, puts a big effort to go up and over, stays at the front of the group. That's really all it's about here, just trying to maintain contact with this group. They're going to drop it down here a little bit as they go up and over. It's really amazing how much these rollers have had an impact on the race. They really find any chance that they can for an elevation change to launch their attacks. It's really amazing how important these courses are to the way that these races play out.
Yes, and really interesting to see that very, very quickly this group are coming back off any power that they put on. They're taking a push, they're putting the power down to see if anybody else is responding. The group are going with, so then they're coming back off. I think this is a game of waiting now for this group. This is a game of getting through and getting around, not getting caught, not letting the group get any bigger. But at the moment, they seem very happy to push on those pedals and then take a break and back off. So Friat now again, 2 watts per kilo in the middle of the group. That's a strong level of recovery for Friat in the middle of that bunch. And I'm wondering whether they really are playing games with each other a little bit. Look at that. Roca as well, also sitting down at around 2.4 watts per kilo. Carlos Ospina's on our screen at the moment. He looks comfortable too. I think this group, I think we're going to see fireworks next lap with this group.
Only a matter of time. You know, these guys have more wattage in their legs. 3.4, 3.5 watts per kilo. That's an easy day in the park for the riders in this group. So when they go, you'll know, because you're going to see these guys get into zones 4, 5, 6, and they'll go across this group. So right now, sort of a truce being made in this group. They're all looking around at each other, waiting. It's like when the check comes at dinner and everyone stares at each other, waiting to see who's going to pick it up.
Well, I wonder who is going to pick that up. But at the moment, it is Pucker and Nair picking it up. And well, is Nair picking it up, or is he following on the coattails of Pucker at the moment? I think Pucker's paying for dinner tonight, and Zach Nair is along for the ride as Hayden continues to push. He's now indeed those front two at the 15-kilometre mark. As you know, it's looking like they are over 600 metres now clear on the course of the chase group. It's sitting at around 50 seconds. As Pucker and Nair push on. They are heading towards the last 2 kilometres of this course. Well, that is lap 1, because they've got to go out again for lap 2 here in Alula on the Culture Ride. It's a very interesting technical course. No big climb, but those rollers really instrumental in what is happening out here today.
It's going to be really interesting to watch how they approach the rollers now as a group of 2 versus a group of what was 10 or 12 riders on lap number 1. Now that they're isolated, it'll be interesting to see how Pucker and Nair play that one out. Emma, I'm going to ask you, as one of the preeminent experts in the sport here, virtual racing, how do you beat Hayden Pucker? I mean, is this just a matter of pure power? Is it a mix of power and strategy? Like, what can Zach Nair do here? Obviously, Hayden Pucker has an incredible engine on him, but let's say you're just a few watts per kilo or 1 watt per kilo on your average below Pucker. I mean, is it possible to win a race like this on strategy alone? They're closely matched on power, but what can Zach Nair do here to beat Hayden Pucker?
Well, I think to start with, Nair is doing exactly what he needs to do, and has been since this group went clear. Nair is on the back of Pucker's wheel, and if you watch very, very closely, viewers, on the power they are putting out, majority of the time Nair is lower than Pucker, so indicating the use of that draft, and Nair using that beautifully. How does he beat Pucker? I do not know, Brad, to be really honest. We've seen Pucker in week 1. We saw him time trial away from the group, and he held a really, really strong time trial pace the whole way. We've seen him put in some phenomenal power and power kicks. We did see him out sprinted last time out by Thomas Thrall. So we know when it comes down to a sprint, if you've got a really big kick like Tom Thrall has, that is an opportunity to beat Hayden Pucker. Has Zach Nair got that sprint? Can he be with him at the end by the finish line at that 34.6 kilometre mark? Well, I think time is going to tell, and how Nair rides those rollers next time out is going to be absolutely crucial.
Pretty clear that Nair is taking the defensive approach right now, just sitting on Hayden Pucker, which is absolutely the right move to do here. Let Pucker wear himself out. You can see the difference in the watts per kilo on the left gameplay screen here. You can see Pucker doing about 5.3 watts per kilo. Zach Nair only has to do 4.7 to stay with him. So doing a very good job of riding this more efficiently, but will roughly 15K of racing left. Will that be enough to wear Hayden Pucker out, or can he ride at 5.2 watts per kilo all day long?
Well, we also have to bear in mind that it's a great tactic to have gone with Pucker on lap 1, because on that rear wheel and holding onto that wheel, they've established a gap now of around 70 seconds. If Nair could be riding himself into second place, if he can't beat Pucker, but if he can beat Pucker, well, there's a top spot on that podium waiting for him.
Heck of a group right here, as well as John Brune goes up to the front. This is going to be a great battle to watch for the rest of the day today, as these guys locking in here. I love being able to see these 3 riders, 3 different riding styles. You see how Thrall is pushing, moving those shoulders side to side, big wattage with each pedal stroke. John Brune looking nice and relaxed, very easy on those pedal strokes. And then Neil Fryatt is Mr. Consistency, very strong, solid effort on the bike, not moving the upper body a whole lot. 3 very different riding styles in this group. Cannot wait to see these guys play it out on the last lap.
Well, let's not forget Neil Fryatt was second in the US National Championships in 2024 and 14th in the World Championships this year. You know, he knows what he is doing, and he did look the picture of I don't want to use the word calmness. We've seen him in there. We saw him attacking earlier on. We saw him putting down the power, and we saw him working really hard and digging really deep. At the moment, he looks really considered. You know, he's in this group, and I think he's going to be one to watch next lap. And well, at the moment, Ospina, Mar, Fryatt, Panizza, Bird, Roker, and Thrall are all in this group. It's a strong, strong group of racers here, and they're at the 17.6 kilometre marker, and they head out onto lap 2.
A little further back to 15th on the road, Kurt Druffel taking a look at it. He's going to link up with these riders in front of him, Sebastian Perot and Ben Schauland, going to form a group of 3 here. So many great stories in races like this where you see riders link up sort of all over the course, and then they have these mini battles. This is going to be another one right here with Schauland, Perot, and Druffel sorting out 13th, 14th, and 15th.
Yeah, he is indeed. And Mitchell, the rider behind, who we were in with early on the race today. But you are right, Brad. The races within the race are really, really interesting as well. And those battles continue all the way down the race field as Droffel is the rider we are in with a group of 3. They are going to have an interesting final lap as well. And they will all be battling for the best spot. Now, interestingly, Matthias and Hill are only 24 seconds up the road. The group could well bring them back.
It's going to take cooperation in that group for sure, and looks like they've got it, doing a very good job of sort of riding in that nice pace line. You can see the drafting taking place, so we'll keep an eye on that as we go back to second group on the road with Panizza, Roca, Ospina, and company as they continue to stay together. I have to imagine, though, Emma, that this group will split up next time they hit those rollers. There's got to be someone in here who either hits it on the front or suffers and can't stay with the group when they go over those rollers for the second and final time.
Well, I think it's definitely the story we're going to see, Brad, because I think we've had a number of quiet riders in this group who have really been making the most of the fact there is a group around them, and that they were able to take an easier sort of latter half to that first lap. They are now well and truly on lap 2, and on the top right-hand corner of your screen, or their screen, should I say, on the right-hand side of our screen, those rollers are coming. On the left-hand side at 20.2 kilometres, they're now over a kilometre up the road. Pucker and Nair are coming in to the base of those 7 rollers again. Well, are we going to see an attack here from Pucker? Are we going to see an attack here from Nair? Or are we just going to see these 2 riders continue to ride together with that 90-second gap that they've got? Pucker has not come off the front of this.
I have a feeling these guys didn't come here for a friendly ride together, even though it is a coach and student dynamic. They're going to race against each other as Pucker starts to lift the tempo up to 7 watts per kilo now. Nair perfectly responding. Look how matched these power numbers are. They are dead on between Nair and Pucker here as we take a look at Pucker out of the saddle. Zach Nair not letting an inch open up between the two of them. He knows he's got to stay in the draft. Even on the uphill section here, he will get a slight advantage to stay in the draft of Hayden Pucker, but Zach Nair into zone 5 here as Pucker holds it right at 7 watts per kilo. The other thing you got to keep in mind is Zach Nair will be deeply familiar with Hayden Pucker's power numbers, right? Nair is looking at every training ride. He's seen the VO2 max numbers. He knows exactly what this guy can do. So Zach Nair has an intimate knowledge of what Hayden Pucker can do physically, and it's just a matter of figuring out how he's going to beat those incredible numbers.
Yeah, Pucker may well be the student of Nair, but Nair is a student of Pucker. And I think you've got that right, Brad. He not only knows this course and knows the platform. Look at that, you see, the technique and how to dial it and where to put the power down on the course. But you are right. He also knows Hayden Pucker very, very well. And I doubt there are many other racers out there who know what Hucker can do, as well as Zach Nair does, as these two riders continue to tap. They're coming to the top of the second of the rollers, the steepest and longest one well and truly behind them now, as they continue the duo that has been together since the end of the rollers last time round. They've extended that gap. It's now nearly 2 minutes as we go in with Fryer and Panizza, Brune and Thrall. Ospina is in this group as well, and that's the road that is about to kick upwards in front of them.
And here we go. Panizza going to be first to hit out. He goes up to 7.5 watts per kilo. Already, riders starting to drop off the back of the group as Panizza hits it hard here, stringing them out on the way up. This is what we expected. Look at all the red on the right-hand side of the screen. Everybody into zone 6 here on the way up. These guys are riding this one much different than the two leaders did. Much more aggressive in this group. You can see they were only averaging 7.5 watts per kilo in that front group. A lot of these guys hitting up and over 8 on the way up and over here. So Panizza taking it to him. Really aggressive riding here from the Italian. Got to give Riccardo Panizza some credit. You know, it's easy to look in this group and just sit back and say, I'm going to follow the move, right? No one wants to be the first one to jump, but Panizza not afraid to put it out on the line here. John Brune going to try and follow. Ospina a little behind him. Now, that was the first roller they went up and over, but if you look at the top right-hand side of the screen, they got 3 more to conquer here.
Wow, and I tell you what, the recovery is huge that they are trying to take as they come down the other side before they hit the next one. But Panizza was really putting in a massive dig there. You know, he was 5th in round 1, 6th in round 2. He really is eyeing a higher position today overall on round 3 and really working and driving for it. He's driving again at the moment as they come to the top of this roller, just shy of 8 watts per kilo. Bird matching him, I think Bruce Bird. It's going to be interesting to see how much that attack to try and close the gap down, how much damage and how much energy that has taken from Bird and how much he has recovered from it, because I think he is going to be right up there. But really interesting to see these racers so well matched, Brad. They're digging really deep on the climbs. They are absolutely gulping in the air for recovery on the descents, but so far they're all still together.
Surprised to see no one really hit it hard on the descent. They all took the opportunity to get a rest. Last week, we saw some riders using the downhill section to go into zone 5 or 6 and kind of catch the other riders off guard, but not really the case in the group this time. They're going to go back up and over. We'll see if anyone does it on the other side of this roller as we take a look at John Brune in his stats at right around 475, 500 watts right now. That is a massive 7.5 watts per kilo for this guy, keeping his heart rate to average 180, we'll call it, and a pretty high cadence here at 85 RPM. Relatively speaking, you see a lot of virtual racers that like to put that big gear, low cadence style of racing, but keeping the tempo high here on the front. Meanwhile, little gap up here, but this is how it starts, Emma. It's these tiny, tiny gaps that start to form into bigger and bigger gaps.
Well, surprise, surprise, it's Tom Thrall at the front with Riccardo Panizza. We saw Panizza's big numbers. Thrall has gone with him, and I'm not surprised that Thomas Thrall has pushed on there in with him. He took the win last time out, and I was surprised that Thrall was in this group and hadn't gone with Pucker and Nair. A strategic choice, I don't know. Could he just not match the power that they were putting out through the first set of rollers? Did he not want to dig deep that early in this race? And is he now managing that effort with this group? But Fryer, Ospina, Thrall, Panizza, Brune, they are all back together again. There are only 3 more ramps here to go.
Well, for a guy like Tom Thrall, missing the front group is bad, but going so hard trying to follow the front group and then blowing up and coming off the back of the second group is even worse. So Tom Thrall, I think, a very smart rider here. He knew exactly sort of what his limits were and realized that he wouldn't be able to follow that move. So a smart ride there. He's going to race for 3rd in this group now as we see Bruce Bird taking a little look off the front here. Bird's been aggressive this week. He's not putting up huge numbers here, but he did open the gap. One rider going to come up to him. That's Tom Thrall, who has been really covering every move. I think Thrall wants to get away from this group. It looks like he wants to split this group. He's riding really aggressively on the front here. So that tells me that he thinks he can at least split a few riders out of this group. Those are just a few less riders that Tom Thrall has to sprint against when they get into the final kilometers here.
Yeah, and I think they're going to need to put some seconds in to establish a gap that's going to be maintained between the end of the rollers and the finish line. And at the moment, I don't think Bird thinks he's able to do enough because he's come right back off the power, and yet he digs in. Well, I was going to say he digs in and goes again, but he digs in, he breaks, he digs in again. Now kicks really hard. Ospina is the rider who is following with Alex Marr as well. Tom Thrall is there, Neil Fryatt, Ricardo Panizza. In fact, Fryatt putting in a huge dig trying to close down Bruce Bird. And Alex Marr, I've just seen 10 watts per kilo. So absolutely adamant the riders in this group are that Bird is not going away.
I think what Bird is doing here is throwing out an invitation, saying who else wants to turn this into a long, sustained effort here instead of having a sprint against Tom Thrall. And we saw what happened last week. You do not want to take that guy to the line in a head-to-head matchup. He has an incredible last burst on the line here, and Bruce Bird knows that. So he does not want to take Thrall to the line. This is how you're going to beat Thrall in a race like this because he knows what's going to happen if it comes to the line together.
Well, Brad, I think it's the only way you're going to beat Thrall in a race like this because this group at the moment, he is sat in the bunch. And, well, as you said, he's got such a massive kick on him now. What do? They've got just shy of 10 kilometres of fairly flat racing terrain, one or two, I'm going to call them bumps along the way, but they are not huge. They may well be enough to launch an attack, but it's going to have to be a concerted attack to get away from the group now.
Well, I think Bird was speaking directly to Ospina, Panizza, and company when he made his move off the front, saying, guys, we have got to link up here and figure out what to do about this problem. Meanwhile, John Brune starting to fall off the back of this group. He was aggressive and strong in the group earlier, but now finds himself 8 seconds off of that group. We'll see if he can recover and make it back up.
Well, and interestingly, Thomas Thrall is on the back of this group. And really, what does he need to do now? He doesn't need to contribute to the pace on this group at all. He doesn't need to do anything. He just wants to sit on the back and take a tow to the finish line. And that's what he's doing at the moment. And Bruce Bird is having none of it. Yet again, he goes down the road and he kicks hard.
Bruce Bird is going to drop this group or die trying, going all in to try to split this one up. I absolutely love this riding from Bruce Bird. This is aggressive, positive racing off the front as now Hayden Pucker hitting it on the front again as they go up and over one of the bumps in the road, as we called it. But this one continuing to open a gap here as Zach Nair finds himself in trouble. Pucker going up over 8 watts per kilo. Nair can match the power. The problem is he's lost the draft here. So as Pucker goes to 9, Nair's got to do 9.5 to close the gap as he is now dropped by Hayden Pucker, and Pucker staying on the gas. Zone 6 now. Zach Nair is in trouble.
Well, he is indeed, and they stayed together all the way through those 7 rollers this time round. They're at 27.3 kilometres into this 34.6 kilometre race, and Pucker at the moment is continuing on the power. Nair is nearly matching him, but just not quite. So close, but not close enough at the moment for Zach Nair in both distance and power, because Pucker is just continuing, and the question is now, can Hayden Pucker hold on to this pace? Can he hold on to this differential? Or can Zach Nair close down the gap? Well, at the moment, we're in with Nair on our screens, and we can see the work going into trying to close the gap down, but Pucker is ticking those seconds up.
Nair's got 7 kilometers to do it on the way to the finish here as they're inside their last lap of racing. Hayden Pucker up to the front at 5.5 watts per kilo, but you can already see the average numbers for Pucker are just a little higher than Zach Nair here. I think Nair may be hitting a wall in terms of what he can physically put into the bike here as Hayden Pucker continues his dominant performance here in the Echelon Racing League. Remember, leading the series here, but only by 10 points to Tom Thrall here, who's now in Group 2. So this will widen Hayden Pucker's lead if he's able to hold on for the overall win here.
Yeah, and he's backing off the pace a little bit, but obviously very mindful of that gap back to Nair. Interestingly, the race behind, well, the power and the pace came off the race behind completely whilst we were watching Pucker and Nair. It's gone on a little because they've now hit that same climb on the course where we saw Pucker attack Nair. But this pack, they are side by side. They are still 3 riders wide across the road, indicating the similarity of the pace and power coming out of the riders. And just how well matched they are. Well, last time we were with them, it was John Brune who just got distance off the back of the group, and that has stabilised. So Brune no longer with the group. They are down one rider, but it's still a big group.
A little further back, we see the Perot Shaolin group. Kurt Druffel was trying to hang on this group earlier. We saw a group of 3 last time we checked in with these guys. Druffel has come off of that group, and now Perot and Shaolin find themselves linked up together in the race for 13th and 14th. Druffel solo behind them, trying to hold off Eric Mitchell. He's got a nice gap back to 16th, so Druffel should be fine in 15th. These guys 51 seconds behind the next group up the road. That'll be Eric Hill and Andre Matias riding together in a group of 2. I don't know if they're going to be able to make that up in what is only about 6 kilometers of racing left here. So a lot of these groups are starting to lock in and figure out how they're going to win out of their group, trying to get ready for what should be a really exciting final kick to the line.
Yeah, and Hill and Matthias, that was 25 seconds the gap last time we were in with them. So those two are doing a great job a little bit further up the road. In fact, there they are on the left-hand side of the screen, doing a great job of establishing that gap and maintaining that gap over Shalland and the group on the right-hand side of your screen. So fabulous to see these riders working together, Brad, all the way down the race field.
Well, they're going to have a chance to try their sprinting legs today on the Alula course. Again, this is really different from the first couple weeks of racing that we had in the Echelon Racing League, where both weeks 1 and 2 included some major climbs on the course. That was not the case here today, but it really hasn't affected the outcome much because Hayden Pucker has continued to dominate here. Meanwhile, action in Group 2, Bruce Bird hitting it, putting a couple riders in trouble at the back. They respond very well. These guys are going at it in the race for 3rd place here.
Well, sometimes you just want fortune to favour a brave rider, don't you, Brad? Because I tell you something, Bruce Bird has got to be the bravest rider in this bunch. He has been attacking
100%.
and attacking and attacking and really trying to make the racing action happen here in this group. And the group continually responding to him.
And now Bird on the back foot here. We'll see if he can recover, get back in. Should be no problem for him, as Hayden Pucker continues to put in time up to 16 seconds over Zach Nair. He is dominating this one on the front. That's going to be really tough for Nair to make back with just a few kilometers of racing to go here. So the amazing thing to me is that Hayden Pucker will stay on this gap. He's not comfortable winning by 18 seconds. He wants to win by 18 minutes if he can. So he'll continue to push this tempo, continue to put the work in, and Hayden Pucker continuing to open the gap.
Well, he is indeed, and he's at, coming up for 31 kilometres now in the race, so he's going to have 3.6k to go. That's Pucker on the left-hand side of your screen. Zach Nair, the rider, in 2nd place. He's, well, just around 20 seconds back. He's 1 minute 30, though, clear of the chase group, so I think they've really established themselves now in position 1 and 2. Bruce Bird yet again on the front of the chase group at the moment. Tom Thrall, the rider, chasing him down. The second they make the catch for the attack on the front, the pace comes straight off this group. It really is now a case of push on, attack, see if we can go clear. If the riders respond behind, save as much energy as possible. And it's really like, hitting that accelerator pedal and then immediately hitting the brake constantly at the moment in this chase group.
4.6 kilometers to go here to the line, a little under that. I love watching the ostriches running alongside. One of the cool features of the Alula course here on MyWhoosh. Unique fans off to the side of the road.
Well, Thrall, I don't think Thrall's watching the ostriches at the moment, Brad. I think Thrall is watching the other riders here, because I would be, if I was him, really paying close attention now, because they're coming into that final 4 kilometres here in Alula, and this is the chase group. Now, if it is anything like the races that we had earlier on today, well, the sprints are going to be very close and very interesting. So it really is a mind. Oh, look at this. Bruce Bird. Who needs to wait for the sprint when you are Bruce Bird?
Mr. Aggressive every week. Bruce Bird going again. Certainly gets my award for the most active rider in this group so far, although Neil Fryatt going to follow his move, get up to him. But this was all initiated by Bird's move out of the group. It takes one strong rider to have the guts to jump out of here, and so far that has been Bruce Bird over and over and over and over. Whether or not that pays off and gets him a third place on the day today remains to be seen, but you got to give him credit for at least trying, being aggressive, making it interesting. If you want to take a big win, you got to take a big gamble.
Oh, you do indeed. And you know what? In round one, Bird finished in 11th place. In round two, he finished in 9th. He's he's looking to move up through the series and through each round. And he's doing a great job today.
Seeing more zone 6 rides a little further down. Fryatt and company doing everything they can to close down those gaps. This group is, I wouldn't call it negative racing in this group. I mean, they're certainly keeping the pressure on. The average power in this group extremely high here. So they're keeping each other accountable, that's for sure. But Bruce Bird going to go again. I love watching this guy race. Bruce Bird puts in another massive effort here. 8 watts per kilo in the group coming out of nowhere. And he just came off of another move, but he reloaded the chamber and went again.
Well, I think he's got a ticker on his heart rate that when it drops to around 147, that's the time you attack again, because that's enough heart rate recovery before you go again. Well, Bird's on our screen at the moment, and you can see him up and out of the saddle, and you can see him putting the effort in, the dig in at the moment. Alex Marr is trying to respond behind, but Bird is getting a gap this time. They are not putting in the power. Well, Thomas Thrall comes to the front of the group, and I've just seen 11 watts per kilo. He is sprinting across. Panizza trying to pick up the charge as well. But Bird, has he done it this time?
Oh, he's got a big problem behind him because here comes Panizza and Thrall on their way up. They've got him in sight, and he's still got about 2K of racing to go. That is a big effort, a big ask for Bruce Bird to try and hold on to this gap for 2K, as now Panizza and Thrall making their way up, and looks like they've got him in sight. They're going to make the catch right here. Fryatt will also come up. Marr is also there. I don't know if he got rid of anyone in that group with that effort. Here comes Roca back up into the group. Ospina back up, and then everyone is still there in the race for third. Bird just cannot get rid of these guys.
Well, you cannot say he hasn't been trying, because Bruce Bird has really desperately been trying to break that group. Well, at 34.2 kilometres into this 34.6 kilometre race, Hayden Pucker has broken everybody. He's got a 30-second gap now over Zach Nair, the rider who went with him on lap 1. It's 1 minute 46 back to the chase group we've just been watching, as Pucker now sweeping through the final bends towards the finish.
Well, it's amazing to call this an easy ride for Hayden Pucker, but seeing 6 watts per kilo, knowing that he can easily go over 10 if he wants to, I think Pucker is enjoying the moment a little bit here for the closing kilometers as he makes his way through. Hayden Pucker will win week number 3 of the Echelon Racing League solo, 39 seconds ahead of Zach Nair.
Fabulous riding from Pucker there to come across the line in first place. Zach Nair, he'd been with Pucker for some time today out on the race, and he's sweeping through the final corners. He's going to come around the right-hand bend, and he's going to see the finish line ahead of him, that UCI banner signifying the end of the race today for Zach Nair. A very well-deserved second place. Some really smart riding out there on lap 1 to go with the leading group and take second place as reward.
Big efforts behind them as the Italian Riccardo Panizza has attacked the group, racing for third place. He's got a little gap over Tom Thrall here, but not much. Thrall, Fryatt, Bird, and Roca all there, got him in sight as they have just about a half kilometer of racing to go. Can Panizza hold on to this one? He's going to have to do a whole lot more wattage than 2.5 as he now goes up to 7. And Bird trying to respond here. Panizza dying 1,000 deaths in his pain cave. You can see the pain on his face as this group tries to chase him down to 0.4K to go now. Panizza still has the gap. Bird, Fryatt, Marr all trying to close it down, but Panizza holding on to the thinnest of margins here.
Well, Thomas Thrall's just kicked at 13 watts per kilo. That is his timing. He says it's time to go, and he's launched the Thrall ball. As he kicks hard, he goes over the top of Panizza. What can Panizza do? Fryer responds at 16 watts per kilo. Can Fryer get his timing right? Can Fryer go over Thrall? Neil Fryer takes third place today. Thomas Thrall will take fourth. Rocco will take fifth there, I think. Then Bird in sixth. Ospina and Mar. What a sprint finish. And Neil Fryatt, his timing was perfection.
Bruce Bird going to hold on for sixth place, the most aggressive rider out there today by far, has a top 10 ride to show for it. Meanwhile, back to John Brune, who was riding with that group earlier. Brune now solo all by himself. He's going to roll in here into the closing kilometers to wrap up his ride today. We'll see Matthias and Eric Hill battle behind them in the race for 8th and 9th on course right now, but it'll be just outside the top 10 for these guys today.
Wow, what a finish. We knew there was going to be a big sprint finish from that group because nobody could shake away off the front, and John Brune unfortunately getting dropped off the back, but he's going to come through for a great finish today. He's going to come through in the top 10 on round 3, and I think the battles are unfolding behind as well, you know, in those smaller groups that we've been dropping into and out of throughout the race today. So I think we're going to see many more sprints to come, but John Brune is going to come through for a top 10 position today on round 3 of the Echelon Racing League.
Nice relaxed ride for John on the way in here. It'll be interesting to watch the Eric Hill and Andre Matthias battle just behind them, about a minute 45 back, and then Perot and Shaolin still together in their group of 2. Again, all these little battles unfolding. Sometimes those are the best stories, like watching Bruce Bird today. Maybe the best part of our elite men's races, watching the aggressive riding of Bird in that group. Well, it is enjoyable to watch a dominant performance on the front from someone like Hayden Bucker. I really like the way that Bird raced today. You see the Hill and Matthias group on the right-hand side of your screen here. Hill going to take the front spot here. Matthias getting a little draft off of him. There's just a small advantage to be had in this scenario, but when these guys hit it, they're going to hit it hard in the closing kilometers.
Yeah, they are indeed. And so nice to see John Brune having a very comfortably relaxed and enjoyable finish to his race today. Great. I love the little windows that we get going into the riders' paint coast, but at the moment it's Hill who's launching a long run to the finish, you know, because Andre Matthias, these two have been together and locked together for so long on the course, but it's still 600 meters to the finish as Hill attacks.
I think Hill going to be able to hold on to that one. We will go back and check as we confirm those. Here are your results from last week in our elite women's race up next, and this is your elite men's race for this week. Hayden Bucker ends up 39 seconds ahead of Zach Nair. Neil Fryatt taking the best of that group in third after out-sprinting Thomas Thrall, showing that the giant can be beaten. A David versus Goliath scenario, and Tom Thrall falls to Neil Fryatt.
Right, it was so close. That chase group, that sprint, absolutely fantastic. And as you say, Puckett, Nair, Fryatt, Thrall, Rockerbird, Ospina, Mar, Panizza and Brune is going to be really, really interesting to see what that does to the series standings, because there are going to be some changes.
I'll tell you, the fact that Bruce Bird held on to that means that he's going to get one of these right eventually. It's just a matter of time before we see that strategy work out. So we're going to take a quick break as we get ready for our elite women's race coming up next. We'll be back with Emma Martin. My name is Brad Soner, saying thanks for watching, and we'll see you back for the elite women's race coming up very soon. Welcome back to week number 3 of the Echelon Racing League. Elite women up next here as we saw an incredible elite men's race just wrap up. Welcome back. Brad Soner here alongside Emma Martin as we get ready to conquer the Alula course here. It's been a very exciting day of racing, watching that men's race in a very different style of racing that we're seeing on a relatively flat course with just a few bumps out there. So it'll be very interesting to watch how this elite women's race plays out. After a dominant performance last week from Elise Gallegos, we're going to see if she can do it again this week. But Emma, once you get a win like that, there's a lot of riders watching your name. And so you see Elise Gallegos down there in third. She's going to have a lot of eyes on her this week.
Oh, I agree, Brad. She's going to be a marked rider. But Lisa Hermansen, look at her. She tops the table at the moment after 2 rounds with 375 points. She's 5 points clear of Liz Van Hooling. I think there's going to be a lot of very close competition in this women's race. Take a look at that as well. 4th and 5th, tied on points, both with 340. Tiffany Penner from Canada, Melissa Aitken from the USA. Johanna Tidholm, who have we seen? I'm going to call her the master of closing a gap. She is sat in 6th place overall at the moment on 330 points. So it is really close, and then the next few stages of the Echelon Racing League are going to be crucial to who tops the table in the women's standings overall.
The consistency, a big part of that. The riders racing week after week after week. The other part of the Echelon Racing League for the American riders, they need to participate in at least one of these in order to qualify for their national championships coming up in couple months from now. So it'll be interesting to watch those riders. Here are your riders that have signed up for the Echelon Racing League, including Gallegos. Now, some of these riders have been hit and miss. We saw Kolchinsky join us last week in the Echelon Racing League. She had a major impact on the race, and there are a lot of riders in here, Manson included. We haven't seen a lot from Jackie Godby so far in the Echelon Racing, and we'll see if she makes an appearance here at some point over the next couple weeks. But Van Houweling also back on the list here, so it'll be really interesting to watch this group at the front. There's really a very clear selection that gets made at the front of these elite women's race. We saw it last week where it really went down to just 3 riders going clear. So we'll see if we see that same separation on the front this week. But if there was ever a time for an upset or a surprise performance, it would be one of these flat days. I think this will be the one where you have a chance to surprise the other riders because there's no major climbing. It's just a couple rollers. This is where you see an upset on a course like this in Alula.
Well, a couple of rollers, Brad, as you say, 7 in total. You can see them on the screen, a little bit like a jagged saw edge. They're around, well, the first is the longest at 400 meters, and then they become between 200 and 300 meters in length each. So they are short and they are sharp. Average gradient's around 6% on those. There's a fair, good run in till we get to them. On lap 1, we then run out the other side for a flat section before the next climb. It's another short climb. It's not as steep. They come down off the other side, and then it's a long run to the end of the lap. Then when they get to that 17.3 kilometer mark, yep, they go round again, and then back into those rollers for lap number 2 to give that total of 34.6 kilometers of racing today. And Brad, in the earlier races today, in the women's C and the women's B races, both of those races went to a sprint.
We'll see if we get more of the same today in our women's elite races. Do want to give a shout out to those women's B and C winners. Durancy Gonzalez winning the women's B category. And then in our women's C race earlier today, big shout out to Valentina de Segna, winner there at the top of the list. So we go out to live action on course where Elise Gallegos keeping an eye on things. Melissa Aitken leading the way here. Tiffany Penner in the group. Hermansen is there. And Van Houweling in this front group of 5 right now. So a lot of familiar names here. Hermansen, the most aggressive rider in this group by far. We've really enjoyed watching her closing gaps, making moves in weeks 1 and 2. Looks like Van Houweling in a little trouble early on here. This is surprising to me, considering Van Houweling has really been in that initial selection for the first couple weeks. So Liz Van Houweling in a very out of character position here.
Yeah, she is indeed, as we see her in the group here. And we can see her on the screen as well. So Van Houweling is the rider we are watching, just taking some hydration on board. Aitken, Penner, Hermansen and Gallegos seem to be the group clear.
We'll keep an eye on this gap here as Van Houweling at about 38 seconds back, call it 40, up to that front group of four. That is overcomable. She can do it. She's incredibly strong, and this is sort of her specialty here with these long, sustained efforts. So we'll keep an eye on Van Houweling. Meanwhile, up at the front group four, staying together, Tiffany Penner taking it to the group. She's been super aggressive on the front. Gallegos going to follow that move. And really, this is on to the first roller here as they make their way up and over. No separation over the first one. We'll see if they hit it again over the second sawtooth here.
Well, Hermansen on the front here, you know, she took the win in round one. Gallegos took the win in round two, closely on Hermansen's wheel. And this, for me, is a type of course that could suit Lisa Hermansen. You know, these climbs are short, they're sharp, and she really is a great punchy rider. In fact, that really, for me, is her key strength to her racing, Lisa Hermansen. Melissa Aitken showing us that she's a rider who wants some of the action today, and right at the front of the race at the moment. Hermansen, Penner, and Gallegos. You can see the concentration on Gallegos' face there, just making sure she's part and parcel of the group, not doing too much, coming off the power on the descent to take as much recovery as possible and to drop that heart rate as much as possible before the effort has to go in again. And you can see there the quick change, the drop of the heart rate, 4 or 5 beats per minute it dropped before yet again she has to punch and start to push again, and the heart rate starts to climb.
And then the power right back to it. On the front, there is my favorite mascot on the left-hand side of your screen, running alongside the courses. We take a look inside Melissa Aitken's pain cave out of the saddle, getting a little motivation behind her as Aitken tries to follow these moves. It's been a lot of ups and downs out there today. It's sort of interval training for these riders. That's the style of racing that I hope they've trained up for this one, because there's a lot of on and off, on and off. It's not a constant power type of race here today, which I think I expected, thinking this was going to be a flat day, but they found every inch of elevation that they could on this course and attacked it.
Well, and this group really well matched, you know, because take a look at that. They're coming to the top of the penultimate roller of these sevens, and they are all still together. So Hermansen, Gallegos, Aitken, and Penner really well matched through this section. And you can see Tiffany Penner on our screen. Oh, I'm loving the Christmas lights. I think Christmas lights should stay up all year round sometimes. They bring such character to a pain cave, particularly when you're riding.
I am in the same camp of year-round holiday lights. There's just nothing better.
Well, Gallegos, Hermansen, Penner, and Aitken now on the final climb here of these rollers on lap one. And the 4 of them, you can see, look how closely matched they are. They're nearly riding on top of each other here. Penner doing a great job on the front, and Lisa Hermansen just pulling to the front of the group now as the transition on to the descent. I think these 4 riders, well, that's it through the first set of rollers today. They're at 7 kilometers into this 34.6 kilometer race. Brad, I think we are going to see this. I'm making an early prediction. I think we're going to see this group complete this lap together. And then maybe it's the rollers the next time around where we may see some punchy moves.
I like it. We've seen a lot of separation in the Echelon Racing League weeks 1 and 2. It'd be interesting to see a large group come to the line together and try and sprint it out into the closing kilometers. So that would be this group of 4 right here with Gallegos, Penner, Hermansen, and Aitken finding their way into the front group. And now we just wait for the separation. It's not a question of if, but when someone's going to hit this. We saw Gallegos last week take it to him, but this week we've been seeing Tiffany Penner riding on the front a lot. Really, everyone's been taking their turns in this group. I don't think there's one rider who's done a significantly larger amount of work in this group yet. But it will come. It's only a matter of time. Probably, you're right, next time they hit those rollers. But in this flat section right here, it is a chance to kind of recover a little bit. You see they're only doing about 3 watts per kilo, relatively easy riding here. This is the time where it would be easy to hit out here and open a gap. But the problem is you've got a roller coming up in just a kilometer and a half from now. And so you know that that group of 3 is going to put in the effort on that roller. I don't know if you want to be solo heading into the rollers here.
Oh, I think being part and parcel of the group and taking as much recovery as possible really critical. And Melissa Aitken here, she's on the front of the group at the moment, setting the pace. And maybe that's how she feels comfortable today. You know, some riders, they like to go out and they like to set their own pace. Others like to take a tow and to sit in that draft and almost to be the hidden rider in the group. It's always really interesting to find out and learn about the riders and to see which style of racing they prefer. Well, Elise Gallegos last week, Brad, she was part and parcel of that leading group then with Liz Van Hooling and Kristen Kolczynski. And it looked, didn't it, like it was going to go to a sprint finish. But Gallegos, she surprised us on the Golden Gate Bridge last week with that attack.
Gallegos definitely called her shot last week, and I would expect to see the same this week. I know you saw her drop into some of the amateur races earlier today, just watching some of the other Echelon Racing League categories, just trying to get an eye on sort of how the race played out. That is good intel. That's good bike racing. That's professional virtual racing right there. Putting in the work, doing the recon, doing the research. And Gallegos is going to have a little advantage coming into this one because she's watched these races play out. She knows the course. She knows where these attacks are going to happen. She knows where the gaps are going to come. So I'll be watching Gallegos very closely in the closing lap here.
Well, I can tell you she has been doing her homework a lot because not only did Gallegos watch the amateur racing, she watched the elite men's racing as well. She's been on the chat, on the live chat of the streams all the way through, really doing her homework on the courses and the different types of tactics that play out. And Liz Van Hooling, for me, these are different tactics and they could well play out for her. I almost don't want to say it out loud because I am willing her for this to work because Van Hooling at the moment is time trialing her way, hopefully onto the back of this leading group.
Good news for her, leading group taking it relatively easy up the front right now. 2.5, 3 watts per kilo. This is where Van Hooling is going to have to attack. When you see those numbers drop below 3 or 4 watts per kilo, that's a door being opened for Van Hooling trying to chase this one back. So she really needs to not only stay on a constant power, but when she sees those opportunities, when they kind of take a break up in the front group, she's got to use that chance to close down the gap and just slowly pick off what is now a 49-second gap. If she can bring back 10 seconds every time they take a break, that's 5 efforts to get back into the group.
Yeah, and she'll be doing exactly what we saw Tidholm do on stage 1, continually closing the gaps down in a measured way. And I think for me, that is absolutely key because if you push and you push hard and you expend too much energy, you could pay for it later. If you do it in a more measured way, and it looked as though Liz was really thinking about what she was doing as she was balancing the amount of power that she was putting in and the effort she was putting in to close the gap down. Now, the group here at the front, Gallegos pushing on with Hermansen, Aitken and Penner. In fact, it's Penner who's just off the back of the group. This is the small climb that we saw on the map, and it really is a climb that the riders are pushing on at the moment, and Gallegos is the one at the front pushing, Aitken covering the move, and it's great to see Melissa Aitken riding really, really strongly today. She's lying 5th overall in the series standings at the moment, and I think she's riding strongly enough, Brad, that she could see herself working her way up those standings today.
100% golden opportunity to pick up some overall points in the Echelon Racing League. So I would expect her to certainly move up with a top 5 performance here. As you see Melissa Aitken and all her stats on the right-hand side of her rider cam there. Very low cadence here, 70 rotations per minute. That is the big gear sort of climbing style of Melissa Aitken here, and it worked as she closes the gap back up and over, but gapping one off. This hill has been really the most important part of this course. I thought it was going to happen on the sawtooth rollers that you talked about at the beginning, but we're going to have to give this one a name. It's the Col de Alula up and over, as it has been crucial in how these races have played out.
Yeah. No, you are quite right. It is indeed where we saw Pucker put the attack on Zach Nair when those 2 riders went clear on lap 1 in the men's race. No spoilers as to who wins that race. You do need to take a watch if you haven't, but stay with us first of all, because this women's race, I think this is going to be a cracker, because Elise Gallegos is pushing on at the front and Aitken is the rider responding. Hermansen closing the gap. Tiffany Penner just watching the back of the group, not panicking by what's going on ahead. She's just 1 second second off the back, but her pace is strong and she's going to come into the back of the group and they're not going to go away from her. Liz Van Hooling, the gap looks as though it's growing, but I think that's because she's probably on the climb behind. And once she gets onto the flat and up and over that climbing section, we'll see possibly a better representation of the gap there. But these 4 riders in the front group are indeed clear 11.6 kilometers into the race. Now, the rest of this lap, Brad, is fairly flat. There are indeed 1 or 2 bumps on the road, and you can see them on the top right-hand corner of the screen. You can see the road. The yellow line is where the group of riders we are with at the moment is on the course. And then what is ahead of them is very clearly seen. Currently pan flat at the moment, but not for long.
I wouldn't expect to see any moves in this group. There's no dominant rider in this group of 4 that really has a significantly higher power output that would favor them on the flats here. So I don't know if I expect to see anyone attacking on the flat section here. This is really just a chance to kind of recover, look around, take inventory, and get ready for the next lap, which will include that set of rollers and then the Col de Alula after that, where this race has been won and lost for a lot of the races today. So I don't know if we're going to see much action on the flats here, but even these little kickers right here that they're about to go up and over, just a tiny bump in the elevation profile, but some riders like Lisa Hermansen going to take advantage of it as she goes up and over the very small climb here, but succeeds in opening a little gap here. Hermansen, very aggressive. Love this riding. She knows she's not going to get a lot of chances to drop names like Gallegos, Aiken, and Penner, and if she can catch them off guard and surprise them a little bit, that's a great chance to drop some of these riders. So Hermansen going to hit it up and over, but everybody responds to it, and they all stay together.
Well, it's also one of those moves, isn't it, Brad, where you can take the sting out of people's legs for later by putting the power down and putting a pressure on. Also, thinking about who's going to respond, who's the rider who's marking this group or from this group, and it gives you some information on your competitors.
And now Hermansen trying to respond to Gallegos and Aiken up to the front here. She lit a fuse in this group up and over the rollers here. As now everybody getting in on the action into zone 6 here for Gallegos up at the top. Tiffany Penner going up and over 6 watts per kilo as well. 4th in the group, trying to hold on here. There's a look at all 4 of your riders in the breakaway right now, and this is going to be an incredible showdown for these 4 as they get ready to head into the last lap on Alula here.
Well, they are indeed coming towards the latter stages of lap number 1. Aitken, Penner, Gallegos and Hermansen are tied together in battle in the leading group. Van Hooling is the rider continuing the charge and trying to close the gap down. It's looking like she's around 600 meters back at the moment on the chase group, and it's a difficult gap to close. But if the front group start playing cat and mouse with each other and back off the pace, she does stand a chance.
The problem for Van Hooling, though, is that they attacked on that very minor roller that they just went up and over. So I think that's a bad sign, showing that they're going to be a little twitchy in this front group of 4. They're not going to take it easy today, and that's a problem for Lisa Van Hooling, who's trying desperately to make it back up into this group. No one to draft off of, all by herself. One of the hardest things to do in any type of bike racing, closing a gap solo. But Van Hooling staying on it, not giving up. She will continue to chase this until the final kilometer.
Well, and I think this really for her is about what can she control. She can control her pace. What she can't control is what the group in front of her are doing.
And they're racing. That's the problem for Lisa Van Hooling. They're being very aggressive up there. You know, sometimes riders race negatively and they all kind of look around and say, let's just sprint it out at the end of the day, especially on a flat course like this. But the way that Hermansen and company attacked that last, I don't even want to call it a roller. It was just a slight uphill section. And it's very clear that any chance that they get to attack here, they're going to take it. So they're not sitting back. They're not taking this one easy today. This is a super aggressive group of 4 on the front, and it's showing some great racing.
Yeah, they are indeed. And Gallegos goes over the top again. Aitken responds. Do you know, Melissa Aitken, for me at the moment, she's responding to everything. She's being really, really punchy on this course. I think she, this, as I've already said, I think it could be a good day for her, but I'm really impressed by Aitken at the moment. Her Manson punches again, and she's really pushing on here and driving. She does not want this pace to sit at all. Gallegos is on the back of the group, but not for long, because that group is closing down because of the work Aitken is doing.
Hermansen once again attacks here. Not a long attack, but what she did was force the other riders behind her to put in a big interval effort. She forced them to ramp it up to zone 6 very quickly. And Emma, you know, as a coach, that is terror on your legs when you're doing these very high and very low efforts, high to low, high to low. And we just saw Hermansen force the other 3 into one of those efforts.
Yeah, and eventually when you get out of the saddle to do another one of those high efforts, the legs start telling you no. And that really is the part of the race you don't want, because at the moment, Gallegos, Penna, Aitken and Hermansen, they're continually attacking each other. And Hermansen was at 8 watts per kilo there. She is just absolutely adamant. There is no respite in this front group at all. 15.3 kilometers they are at the moment. And Tiffany Penna, you can see her there on the screen. The cadence is good. The cadence is strong, sitting at 87 RPM at the moment. Her heart rate is high, though. Well, it would be for me. I'd be falling off my bike at 185. That's way above my maximum heart rate. But it is so personal to each individual, that heart rate and that effort. And at the moment, the work is strong from Tiffany Penna in this front group.
Tiny little rise coming up here on the elevation profile. We'll see if Hermansen hits it again and tries to tax this group a little bit more, just seeing how many efforts they have in the gas tank today. So meanwhile, Van Hooling a little further back, holding at 1:08. Seems like that gap has stabilized. She is up and over that climb. So we'll call it a little over 60 seconds for Van Hooling. But again, she's fighting a very, very tough battle. The odds certainly stacked against Van Hooling in this scenario, with 4 extremely strong riders pushing each other on the front of this race right now. And Van Hooling just trying to hold on.
Yeah, it's still sitting at around 650 meters in terms of distance. So the distance between Van Hooling and the group ahead has not really changed. Well, I'll tell you what else hasn't changed, and that's Hermansen and Gallegos using the bumps in the road to attack. They continue to go again. Hermansen is on the front. It's like, I don't even know if that's a bump in the road, or is it just traffic furniture?
Manson consistently attacking every time she sees that gradient percentage in the upper right-hand corner go anywhere over like 0.5%. It seems like Lisa Hermansen has taken the opportunity to jump and attack. So she is continuing to force these riders to withdraw from their wattage account, and eventually someone's going to come up short and overdraw that account, which is exactly what Hermansen is trying to do here.
Oh, Gallegos, Penna, Hermansen, and Aitken back off the pace a little. Probably not for long, but they have indeed just settled down. The group on the front now, settling at the moment. They're about to take the right-hand bend, and very shortly, this is the run, or this will be the run towards the finish at the next end of the next lap. So they are now coming towards the last 400 meters. So this gives them a really good look at where that finish line is for next time. And should all 4 of these riders come to this point together next lap round, well, it's all going to be about timing, and it's all going to be about the timing of the sprint. And I'm sure Gallegos will not want that to happen. And if anything to go by, her and Lisa Hermansen, well, the next lap, the next 17.3 kilometers are going to be all about breaking the group.
Relatively straightforward run into the finish. That's the line right there. There is one turn in the last kilometer where it will slow him up a little bit. There was a really tight turn last week. We saw Tom Thrall sprinting to his incredible finish with a really tight finish on the line, but it was really that last turn that came about 300 meters before the line where I think he was able to modulate that power a little better. This one going to be a little more straightforward this week. There's not a ton of finesse to be used in the final sprint on this course. You don't need to worry about backing off into the corners or anything. It's really going to be about matching the other three riders in this group.
It is indeed. And Van Hooling on the left-hand side of your screen is the rider chasing the group of four on the right-hand side of your screen, still sitting around that 650-meter mark. And Van Hooling still sat at around, around 4.5 watts per kilo. And I think that really is the pace that she's decided she is going to do a time trial effort at today, trying to close down the group ahead. The group ahead, well, it's 57. It was out to an hour. It was out to a to a minute and 11 seconds. I really need to engage my brain and my eyesight. It was out to a minute and 11 seconds. So she is closing the gap, Brad.
Slowly but surely reeling it back in. The question is, will she have enough real estate to work out this last minute and 2 seconds that she needs to overcome? It should be noted, this is certainly out of character for Liz Van Hooling. I think there was some sort of issue early on to see this gap open up that quickly. Liz Van Hooling is not the kind of rider that would let a gap like that open up early. So I'll be interested to see what the story was there. But Van Hooling finding herself off the back very early on in this race, which is incredibly out of character for her.
Yeah, and the gap now coming down because the pace has come off the front group. And interestingly, Lisa Hermansen comes towards the front of the pack and starts to push again. And I think it's about one eye on the pack here at the front and one eye on what's going on behind and ensuring that Van Hooling's time trialing doesn't close the gap and come back to the group. So Hermansen pushing on, Gallegos, Penner and Aitken. Well, Aitken and Penner at the moment are trying to take as much recovery as possible because you know what's coming up very shortly, and that is a set of 7 rollers.
Lisa Hermansen salivating at the thought of those rollers coming up in front of her. She knows that she will have an excellent chance to try to drop this group, as has been the story all day. Hermansen has absolutely been the aggressor when it comes to the climbs, the kickers, the rollers, the sawtooths, whatever you want to call them. Hermansen likes this course a lot, and she has figured out where her sweet spot is. It's on those uphills, and she continues to test these riders, just poking the bear, waiting to see if she can get rid of one of these 4.
Well, Lisa Hermansen, I watched ride at the World Championships and on the semi-finals as well, and she squeezed in on those semi-finals into sort of 20th place to qualify for those World Championship finals, and she did it by using the momentum on the courses. She's a past master of using the downhill into the uphill, carrying pace and momentum. She really, really has that technique dialed. The question is she going to be able to use it against the other 3 as they go through these rollers, or are they just so well matched in power? That added technique, well, can it make a difference?
Meanwhile, Van Hooling bringing the gap down to right around 50 seconds up to this group. Unfortunately, she's not closing it as quickly as she needs to. She is closing it, but if she's going to close this gap before the finish line, she's going to need to bring back a little more time, a little more quickly. So we'll keep an eye on Van Hooling, who is in the ride of her life with a solo time trial off the back of the group after an obvious early problem here, trying her best to recover as the front group continues to put the pressure on each other. I'm a little surprised that Hermansen hasn't been able to drop anyone because the efforts that she did were so starkly different from the way that the other riders were riding, right? When everyone else was in zone 2, Hermansen would immediately go into zone 6. And a lot of times those are the moves that cause irreparable gaps, right? Gaps that you can't come back from because it opens so quickly. It takes a while to respond, doesn't it, Emma, to ramp your power up, right? It's not like you can just go from zone 2 to zone 6. There's a ramp effort that needs to be made there in order to get there. And if you start too late, it's going to take too long to match that power.
And then you have the issue that you've got a gap to close before the effort counts. But one of the things that I'm looking at here, Brad, this is coming down and really dramatically at the moment because the others are sat up and currently sat I was going to say sub 3 watts per kilo, but Tiffany Penn has sat at 2 in that leading group, taking a big, deep pause and a big, deep breath before they hit those rollers. And it's allowing Van Hooling to bring that gap down. It's now down to 39 seconds and around 400 meters. So she's done sterling work, chasing this group. Well, this group now hitting the rollers. They're heading up the steepest 400 meters, this first one of these rollers, and it kicks to over 10% at the top.
Once again, Hermansen hit it out, but now Gallegos going to go up and over the top of her and take the effort to Hermansen, who now finds herself with a gap back to Elise Gallegos. So Hermansen, who has been the aggressor so far, now finds herself on the back foot trying to respond to this move from Elise Gallegos. It's not a matter of how many efforts you can do. It's a matter of making the right efforts at the right time. And Elise Gallegos knows that. She waited, called her shot, and now launching the attack on Lisa Hermansen.
Well, she's not backed off too much on the descent this time either, as Hermansen tries to come onto her wheel. Penner and Aitken are the ones who are in the danger zone at the moment at 3 seconds. They can see Hermansen and Gallegos in the distance, but can they catch them? Gallegos and Hermansen have already started the climb as Penner and Aitken come into the bottom.
It is so much harder to close a gap like this on the rollers than it is on the flats here. So this is a very, very dangerous situation for Penner and Aitken, who find themselves off the back of the.
Well, they do indeed find themselves off. Yeah, they find themselves off the back of the pack. Penner and Aitken now at 5 and 6 seconds, respectively. Gallegos goes over the front of the roller, the top of the roller first here. Hermansen is doing the chasing, but she's not too far off of Gallegos' wheel. Penner and Aitken, well, for me, these two need to work together somehow.
Penner holding on with Melissa Aitken here. 5 seconds up to Hermansen and Gallegos. I think Hermansen is going to get there to Gallegos, so this should turn into 2 groups on the road with Gallegos and Hermansen, and then Penner and Aitken linking up here. So 2 by 2 as they make their way into the next sawtooth roller here. Up and over the bridge, Gallegos hitting it up to 6 watts per kilo here. Not too hard, but now Aitken and Penner are going to try and use this opportunity to close the gap. They're seeing that there's not quite the aggression on the front. This is a great opportunity for these two to close the gap back to the 2 leaders.
Yeah, Penner and Aitken are now pushing harder than Hermansen and Gallegos. So Hermansen and Gallegos established that lead on the first 2 rollers. Not able to continue with that high level of power, though. And that may well have something to do with all of those kicks that Hermansen and Gallegos have been doing off the front of the group on the flatlands or on any little bump on the road. Penner and Aitken, well, they may just have put themselves in a better position to close this gap down. It was at 6 or 7 seconds. It's now at 4. Did Gallegos and Hermansen do too much with those attacks on the flatlands? And are they now enabling Penner and Aitken to get back on because of it?
Well, you are watching a crucial point in this elite women's race here in the Echelon Racing League. This could be a race-winning gap for these two. Penner and Aitken desperately trying to hold on to a 4-second gap. They're maintaining the gap, but they're not closing the gap. That's bad news for the 2 chasers here, and this could very well be a winning move because once you get just a little bit of space, the tiniest bit of daylight, that's all you need on MyWhoosh to try to get away here. So Hermansen and Gallegos finding themselves dropping Aitken and Penner, and now they're going to have about call it 11K to the finish here to try to keep these 2 off.
Yeah, this is, I think, going to be really telling now. We've got 3 more of the 7 rollers to play here, and Hermansen and Gallegos go up and on to the climb at the moment. They're kicking, and this is a strong kick from Hermansen. She's come to the front of this duo at the front of this race, and Hermansen and Gallegos now. Gallegos comes over the top. She is pushing as well, so she's taking up the mantle from Hermansen, and they are really pushing at the moment because Penner and Aitken have not given up the chase. They have not sat up. They are, well, while the ostriches dance at the side of the track, Penna and Aitken continue to push.
Massive effort for these two. I think they may be able to get there, depending on the effort of Gallegos and Hermansen up at the front, but they're certainly doing everything that they need to close down this gap. The problem is they're now back out to 5 seconds up to Gallegos and Hermansen here as they continue to try to push the tempo. They are into zone 6 on the front group, and so now the second group needs to respond to this wattage. You can't let a single second open up here. As soon as you see Hermansen or Gallegos go into zone 6, you have to match it in group 2, because the worst case scenario here is you get through these rollers and you find out that you've been losing a couple seconds every roller, which I think is what's happening to Aitken and Penner here. It goes back one more second out, 6 seconds. It's a little tougher to tell on these rollers, but it looks like Hermansen and Gallegos keeping just a slightly higher tempo than those two behind them.
Yeah, and it's going to be telling when they hit the flatlands. Have Hermansen and Gallegos put an all-out effort in through the rollers to break the group? And do they have anything left to have a sustained effort on the other side and hold the gap? Hermansen and Gallegos on this final climb. It is a knife edge on the final roller out of 7. They're going to drop down the other side. There we go. The descent has started. The pace picks up. They're at 40 kilometers, 42, 44, 46, 48. It's heading upwards. Aitken and Penna at 4 seconds. It's a gap, considered. Brad.
Yeah, that's pretty good for those two, though, to be able to hold on to that gap coming up and over those rollers, to be able to respond to two extremely strong riders, Gallegos and Hermansen, going at each other on the front. This is a very, very good ride for Penner and Aitken. All things considered, I think you got to give them some credit for being able to control this gap, control this move, and I think they're on their way back up to join Gallegos and Hermansen. So if they take a look out their back door, they're going to see Penner and Aitken on the way up. They're about to regain contact here. What a ride from these two.
Oh, absolutely phenomenal riding from Tiffany Penner and Melissa Aitken, closing this gap back to 3 seconds at the moment. Gallegos and Hermansen, what can they do about it? You know, there's still 9.6 kilometers to go in this race, and I think this is all going to come back together again. And I think they are having a problem breaking this group because Penner and Aitken do not want to go anywhere.
Guys are like a bad cold. They just won't go away, nagging Gallegos and Hermansen on the front here as they continue to keep the pressure on. Down to 3 seconds here. Look at Penner out of the saddle, doing 5.8 watts per kilo, while the front group does right around 4. That should be enough to get Penner in here. Aitken is off the back now, so she's going to have to respond and make a big effort here as Penner has now dropped Aitken just the tiniest of gaps. That's forcing Aitken into zone 6 here. Penner is going to regain contact here. What a ride for Tiffany Penner today.
Well, the battle is on now, well and truly, in this women's race. Gallegos and Hermansen, they have tried to break Penner and Aitken. Penner has come back. She cannot let that gap go. She has got to push. We can see her on the screen. It was a phenomenal effort to close it down, but she has now got to establish herself on the back of that group, and she's got to get into that draft and stay there. Melissa Aitken probably has one more opportunity to close that gap. It's around 2 to 3 seconds. Hermansen is not putting a big push on the front. Gallegos comes to the front. It's still not a strong pace. Melissa Aitken has just got to squeeze on those pedals to get back into that draft. I know I am willing her, but are her legs able? Yes, they are.
Aitken, they're going to let off the gas on the front. Aitken will regain contact. We're right back where we started, but Hermansen not happy with this scenario here. She's going to hit it once again. Certainly not making any friends with Melissa Aitken. I think Hermansen's going to be off the Christmas card mailing list for her, as now Gallegos and Hermansen attack just as they regain contact.
Oh! It's a we let you get back on, and now we're going to dish it out, and dishing it out Gallegos is at the moment, and Hermansen closes it down. Heartbreak for Aitken and Penner, who worked so hard to close that gap down and come back on, and now they've got to do it all over again.
That was cutthroat. So cold for Gallegos and Hermansen. Absolute assassins in this group here as they attack just as the two make it back on.
How can such lovely people be so cutthroat when it comes to racing.
Well, different animals once they get on the bike, that's for sure. As Gallegos and Hermansen continuing to take it to Penner and Aiken here, but they're going to make it back in. Again, though, they've been making significant withdrawals from their wattage bank account here. So Gallegos and Hermansen have continued to put the pressure on. Let's see if they hit it one more time as Aiken and Penner regain contact near. Will they go again? It's either going to be Hermansen or Gallegos. I don't expect Aiken or Penner to try to attack this one, although that would be a baller move if they were able to do it, but that is a huge physical ask for these riders to attack after closing the incredible gap that they just did.
Well, the Col de Alula has hit them, and Gallegos and Hermansen are moving. Penner is matching the move, you know. Aitken is there as well. The resilience, the determination, and the commitment of these racers today, absolutely phenomenal at the front of this women's race. As Lisa Hermansen picks up the mantle on the front of the race. She's really trying to stretch it out here, but the gradient is not steep. It's only around 2%, and it is not going to hold for long. Gallegos quickly on those pedals, closing it down. She's bringing Penner and Aitken with her. The gap is not big here. They're going to come onto the flat section at the top before they descend off the other side. And I think Penner and Aitken are going to be back on the wheel by the time they go downhill.
Incredible finesse by Gallegos there. You saw her attack very quickly to close the gap up to Hermansen and then immediately let off and got into the gap. She's riding as efficiently as you can in this game, and it's going to pay off at the end of this race when she has to reach deep into her pain cave to try to hold on to this one. Aitken, Gallegos, Hermansen, and Penner all together. I got to say, when those gaps started to open, I thought that was it, Emma. It's incredible that these two riders were able to come back, and now Aitken and Penner have a real chance at a podium today.
Oh, they do indeed. And all four of these riders back together again. And, well, the tactics they have thrown at each other, the power they have put down, and the racing that we have seen between these four already has been absolutely phenomenal. And we aren't even anywhere near the run into the finish yet.
Meanwhile, Liz Van Hooling been maintaining her gap with her solo effort off the back at just a minute 30 back. All things considered, Emma, that's a really good ride for Liz Van Hooling today, considering these four are constantly attacking each other. It's not an easy ride in this front group of four. So, again, big shout out to Liz Van Hooling holding on in 5th spot out there on course as we take a look at Elise Gallegos in her pain cave, last week's winner, getting ready to try and do it again here in week 3.
Yeah, you can see the cogs whirring in her brain whilst her legs were on the turbo. She's trying to strategically work out what she's been witnessing during this race and how she beats the other 3 riders in this group, and how does she take the win today from Penner, from Aitken, and from Hermansen.
A lull
She's not
in
going to
the
tell
action right now. Yeah, classic standoff scenario right here. They're all waiting for someone to make the next move. If history is our teacher, it'll be Hermansen that'll be the first to go out of this group. But that's the beautiful part about bike racing. You never know what's coming. Any one of these 4 riders has a shot at winning this race today.
Yeah, so let's just update our viewers. Lisa Hermansen won round 1 on the Golden Gate. She took maximum points there. She's currently lying in series lead because in round 2, she finished in 4th place. So that overall giving her number 1 spot. Very close. Van Hooling is lying in 2nd. Gallegos lies in 3rd. Penner lies in 4th. And Aitken lies in 5th. So these are the top 5 riders in the series overall, battling it out here. And it's going to be so close because, well, we can tell that because of the attacks, the comebacks, the attacks, the comebacks, and the nature of this racing and the things these riders have thrown at each other today and how they have responded to it.
A lot on the line here in week 3, not just looking at today's race, but also the overall in the Echelon Racing League. We could see a reshuffling today as Gallegos, Hermansen, Penner, and Aiken try and sort out the overall and the stage today. Meanwhile, Penner and Gallegos going to lift the tempo a little bit on the front. Look at the average power in this group. Everybody having a match 5-6 watts per kilo into zones 4, 5, 6. They are keeping the pressure on in this group. No easy rides today as they get ready to crush the last 5K.
Well, it's Melissa Aiken on the front, and this is an interesting move because she was part and parcel of that chase group with Penner. They closed down Hermansen and Gallegos, and Aiken is the rider to kick and go strongly first because she's gone over that first bump. And take a look at the top right-hand corner of your screen. 2 more bumps coming. They are tiny little rises on the road, but they could be enough for a strategic attack.
Well, this is really going to come down to calling your shot, committing to it, and hoping that your legs can back it up. Now's the time to make a plan here. Now's the time to figure out how you're going to beat this group of 4. Do you want to take it to the line? Do you want to try and get a gap early? If you're trying to go with plan number 2, you're going to have to make that move relatively soon, and there's not a ton of opportunities left because it's a mostly flat run into the finish. So if you're hoping to avoid a sprint today, you are rapidly running out of time to force that scenario.
No, you are indeed. And Aiken on our screen at the moment, part and parcel of this leading group. She's right on the front at the moment. They've come over those 2 small rollers on the road. There is 4 kilometres now to go for this leading group of 4 in the women's race. This is round 3 of the Echelon Racing League. And, well, it is a game of cat and mouse now.
You don't see a lot of these scenarios, but I think we're about to be treated to a 4-up sprint to the line here. If this stays as it is, this will be one of the best finishes of the Echelon Racing League so far into week 3 here as Hermansen, Aiken, Gallegos, and Penner try to take it to the line here inside the last, call it 3.5K. Right now, we're getting down to it here in Alula.
Oh, we are indeed. But who is going to take across the line in first place today? All 4 of these riders in this front leading pack are going to want to take that first place. Gallegos, Hermansen, Aitken and Penner. They are all thinking about how they take that win. Van Hooling has desperately tried to close the gap. She got so close to closing that gap. She brought it down to around 450 meters, the distance. But then the front group started attacking each other and she just didn't stand a chance. However consistent she has been in that time trialing pace throughout the entirety of this race today. We can see on the left-hand side of the screen, Van Hooling in 5th place. The top 4, however, well, it's 31.5 kilometers. The finish line is at 34.6. And it is a pretty flat run-in the whole way.
Yeah, rare calm moment in this front group. Emma, is it possible to get a gap on this flat section, or does someone like Lisa Hermansen need an elevation change to open a gap?
Oh, I think it's a good question, Brad. I think we could indeed see a brave rider make an attack on a flat section, and it just depends on how far out that attack goes. As to whether those other riders are waiting for somebody else to respond rather than them responding, and what then happens with the rest of the group. And you could catch them unawares, but it would take a very brave rider because it would have to be a massive attack and a lot of power would need to go through those pedals to make it stick.
Well, certainly going to be a gamble if you try to make that move, but sitting in for the sprint may be the exact same risk factor of the breakaway out here. So someone's going to have to take a risk. Someone's going to have to take a gamble. If you sit back and let the other 3 riders dictate how this one goes, it ain't going to go well for you. So I think the bravest riders here will be rewarded today, but it's so hard to put that gamble out there when you've been riding so hard today. Your legs and lungs are screaming at you, and now you got the commentators telling you to just attack inside the last couple kilometers. Easier said than done.
Maybe I should caveat it by saying the last race I did indeed attack with 2.5 kilometres to go, and 400 metres from the line, I got caught by two riders. I just had gone too long. That's one of the real dangers you've got to watch, because if you are feeling strong and you're 2K out, you've got to make it across the line first. So you have to commit and you have to be able to follow up. And what you don't want is what happened to me and your legs dying in the last 400 metres and you lose first place. But I can tell you, Aitken, Gallegos, Hermansen and Penner, they're all a lot smarter racers than I am.
Look at this group of four locked in, not an inch between them, using every advantage they can to try to get the draft here. Hermansen riding on the front just a little harder than everyone else. You see she's got to do just a little over 3 watts per kilo as the first rider in that line. Aitken going to take over now, but there is a drafting element here that the riders at the back, like now Hermansen and Penner, will have just a slight advantage in this group of four here. But still, nobody hitting out here. When this one goes, it's going to go big. And at this point, I don't think anyone's going to get away. This one looking more and more like it comes down to a sprint. So the fuse is lit. Now we're just waiting for the boom.
Well, Gallegos, Penner, Hermansen and Aitken, the 4 riders in the leading group. We're coming towards the last 1,400 metres. Well, it's coming even closer. It's really coming quickly. They're on the descent at the moment. There's a small climb coming. The question is, are any of them going to use this as a launch pad? As Gallegos, wow, 8.4 watts per kilo from Gallegos. She kicks on the climb. Everybody responds. Nobody gapped this time. Is she going to back off and wait for the finish line, or is she going to go long? She's got 1.1 kilometre now to go. Is this a really long attack from Gallegos?
This is going to be an insane final kilometer here as Gallegos is the first to go. Aitken, Penner, and Hermansen all respond into zone number 6. Aitken still out of the saddle. She's going to go over the top of this one and re-attack. She will match the move and go again as now Aitken on the front of the group. What a ride!
Well, I love this from Melissa Aitken. She just looked like she was closing the gap, but she has gone on those pedals and stayed on them. So Aitken sitting at 5 watts per kilo at the moment. The response now having to come from behind. She's got a 1 second gap back to the group. Can Melissa Aitken hold this? Can she hold this long? She's got 500 metres. The rest are waiting on the sprint and expecting the sprint to run into the back of Melissa Aitken. Can she hold it?
Penner, Gallegos, Hermansen still haven't gone all in on this move. This is a relatively low watt per kilo reading as now Hermansen going to lift that up to 8.8. Here it comes. This is what Melissa Aitken was fearing the entire time into the last 0.4 kilometers. Aitken going to close the gap here. Hermansen trying to get there as well. A great matchup on the front as Hermansen moves forward now. A massive 9 watts per kilo for Lisa Hermansen, and that's going to be enough to win the sprint out of the group of 4. Hermansen wins week number 3 of the Echelon Racing League.
Wow, wow, wow. Lisa Hermansen wins race number 3 after winning race number 1, back on her winning ways. Tiffany Penner taking 2nd place in the sprint from Elise Gallegos. Melissa Aitken, who led that out, coming in 4th place, 1.2 seconds separating the top 4 women today.
A lot of credit to Melissa Aitken on that ride. I know she ended up 4th in the group, but she was the first to attack out of there. I respect the effort, respect the gamble. You had to do it, right? Someone had to attack that group, and Aitken shouldered that burden, was the first to go. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. Hermansen, Gallegos, and Penner were able to make the catch, but Aitken first to head out, so I think that deserves a little bit of credit. Meanwhile, speaking of deserving credit, Liz Van Hooling staying in this one all day today, my hero on this beautiful Saturday afternoon.
Well, she is indeed. And, she got so close. She really, really brought down the gap, and a really cracking effort from Liz Van Hooling today. She comes underneath the UCI banner to take 5th place today on round 3 of the Echelon Racing League. That was a strong ride from Van Hooling.
She's going to settle for 5th place on the day, but I have a feeling that's not the last that we're going to see of Liz Van Hooling. as she ends up 5th place on the day at a minute 18 down on the winner after battling all day to hold on to that gap with Hermansen, Penner, Gallegos, and Aiken attacking each other, lifting the tempo, putting in massive wattage, and still Van Hooling holds on to a minute 18 gap. Great ride for Liz Van Hooling today. But Lisa Hermansen on the top of the leaderboard after winning the sprint, catching Melissa Aitken, and Hermansen gets the top step of the podium on stage 3.
She's going to confirm and extend her lead in the overall series with that win today, Hermansen.
Well, that will make for a very interesting week number 4 of the Echelon Racing League. Hermansen's certainly going to be one to watch, as we are now very excited for the next round of racing here in the Echelon Racing League as we wrap up week number 3 from the ERL, presented by Takis and Wahoo. On behalf of Emma Martin, my name is Brad Soner, saying thanks for an awesome day of racing here on MyWhoosh, an incredible day in our elite women's race. Emma, final thoughts from you as we head into week number 4. I think my takeaway is this is anyone's race and anyone's series.
Oh, I agree with you. And do you know what? The 4th of January is my birthday, and I'm looking forward to one big party on round 4 of the Echelon Racing Series to celebrate. So if you've not registered, get that registration in, get on that start line and come and join us, because race number 4 is going to be a cracker.
All right, we'll see you for Emma's birthday celebration January 1st for race number 4 of the Echelon Racing League. Until then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you then.